There is a town in Canada where Statistics Canada counted 293 homes, and 107 of them stand empty. Not for sale. Empty. Meanwhile, CREA says the national market is recovering. Sales are climbing. The average home is back near $700,000. But in these 10 towns, nobody is buying at any price. And the real reason is not the houses. Number 10. Grande Cache, Newfoundland. On the toe of the Burin Peninsula, 3.5 hours from St. John's, sits one of the oldest fishing towns in North America. Schooner captains built the grand square houses along Water Street. Then in 1992, Ottawa closed the cod fishery, and towns like this lost the industry they were built for. Not for a season, for good. More than 3 decades later, the market still has not found its footing. YUMLS listing data puts the average detached house in Grande Cache at $129,000, and it is not holding there. Over the past year, asking prices dropped more than 23%, while the number of homes for sale grew. In a town of just over 2,000 people, prices are nearly a quarter below last year, and buyers still are not stepping in. Because in Grande Cache, the price was never the problem. A buyer walking into town today is not asking what the house costs. They are asking who they would ever sell it to. Hold on to that question. It is going to follow us across the entire country. That brings us 2 provinces west, to a town where the mines closed more than 40 years ago, and the market is still waiting. Number 9. Atikokan, Ontario. 200 kilometers west of Thunder Bay, at the gateway to Quebec Provincial Park, Atikokan calls itself the canoeing capital of Canada. It used to be an iron town. The Steep Rock and Calland iron mines put thousands of paychecks into this valley, and when they shut down around 1980, the shrinking began and never stopped. Statistics Canada counted 2,642 people at the last census, with a median family income around $46,000. Here is the number that tells you the market is frozen. Per MLS data, the average sold price sits around $127,000, unchanged from a year ago. Not up. Not down. Unchanged. A healthy market moves. A frozen one just sits. Because so few homes trade hands that nothing is left to move the number. And people in towns like this know it. A homeowner in a Canadian real estate forum put the warning plainly. Buying for $70,000 is the easy part. It is the selling that can trap you for years. Remember that sentence. It runs underneath this entire list. Next, a town where the freeze went so deep that the town itself stopped existing. Number 8. Springhill, Nova Scotia. You may know the name from Anne Murray, or from the mining disasters that made this coal town a national story in the 1950s. The mines closed decades ago, and Springhill carried on, a town of miners' houses on a hill in Cumberland County, until April 1, 2015, when after 126 years of incorporation, the town of Springhill dissolved itself into the county. That is not a metaphor. The town looked at its shrinking tax base and its aging pipes, and concluded it could no longer afford to be a town. Statistics Canada counted about 2,650 residents, with median earnings near $29,000. Now watch the market. Per MLS listing data, the number of homes for sale jumped 173% in a single year, nearly triple. Meanwhile, asking prices slipped backwards, with the average listing around $177,000. Picture a buyer standing on Main Street. Houses everywhere, prices soft, sellers motivated, and still they hesitate, because when a town has already admitted it cannot pay its own bills, the discount on the house is really a bill that arrives later, one tax notice at a time. Number 7 is the strangest case in the country, a town frozen solid by a closure that has not even happened yet. Number 7. Coronach, Saskatchewan. 200 kilometers south of Regina, near the Montana border, Coronach is a coal town, with a countdown clock nailed to it. The Poplar River Mine and Power Station employ roughly 300 people, and the mayor has said 2/3 of the town's population had jobs tied to that plant. In 2016, Ottawa announced coal-fired power would end by 2030. The town's own economic transition study reads like an obituary. An 89% drop in household income, a 67% drop in population, roughly $400 million in GDP, gone. Then last June, the province announced it would extend its coal plants anyway, setting up a standoff with the federal rules. The mayor told CBC that some residents were still adjusting to the idea that they might not have to give their houses away after all. In Coronach, giving your house away had quietly become the baseline expectation. Homes here list under $100,000 on Realtor.ca, and they sit, because no buyer can price a coin flip between two governments. Markets can absorb bad news. What they cannot absorb is a town whose entire future is a pending decision in somebody else's office. Number 6 is what it looks like after the decision goes the wrong way, at the end of the longest highway you will ever drive. Number 6. Fort Nelson, British Columbia. Picture the drive. You are on the Alaska Highway, 7 hours north of Prince George, and the boreal forest swallowed the last radio station long ago. Fort Nelson appears out of the spruce as the final real town before the Yukon. A decade ago, this was natural gas country. Rigs, camps, work trucks 3 deep outside the coffee shop. Then the drilling moved south to other basins, and the people followed the workout. Today, the market carries the evidence. Per MLS data this month, Fort Nelson has 77 active listings, half of them priced below $192,500. 2-bedroom homes have been trading around a median under $60,000. 77 listings, in a community of a few thousand people. With Toronto would need tens of thousands of homes on the market at once to match that ratio. Fort Nelson is not a slow market. It is a market where the sellers outnumber the future. And that is the halfway mark of this list, which means it is time to stop the countdown and tell you what is actually going on. Here is what you should have noticed. Every town so far lost the same thing. Not jobs. A single employer that was the town. Cod, iron, coal, gas. But that is only half the answer, and it is the half every headline gives you. The real reason is colder. In a normal market, your house is priced against your neighbor's houses. In a one-employer town, your house is priced against one question. When you need to leave, who takes it off your hands? And if the answer is nobody, then the price is not low. The price is meaningless. Buyers are not rejecting the houses on this list. They are rejecting the exit. On Canadian housing forums, that is how people talk about these towns. Not the house is bad, but you will never get back out. That is why cutting the price does not fix it. The fear is the resale, not the cost. Now, the back half of this list is where the story turns dark. You have already watched one town on this list dissolve itself. It will not be the last. 2 of the next 5 towns held actual votes on whether they should continue to exist. And the town at number 1 watched an asset valued at $1 billion sell for $2. First, number 5. The town that was carried in on winter roads. Number 5. Lynn Lake, Manitoba. This town was not built here. It was moved here. In the late 1940s, when the nickel play opened up, entire buildings were hauled in on tractor trains from the fading mining town of Sheridan, 200 kilometers away. Lynn Lake sits at the end of Highway 391, over 1,000 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. Where the pavement ends, so does the market. The nickel heyday is long over, and Statistics Canada's census tells you what is left. 293 private dwellings, and 107 of them vacant. That is the number from the top of this video. More than 1 in 3 homes, simply empty, in a community now home to only a few hundred people. Search the MLS for Lynn Lake, and you will find almost nothing. Not because homes are scarce, but because listing one is often pointless. This is the far end of the spectrum. Every other town here is sliding along. Grand Bank has falling prices. Atikokan has frozen prices. Lynn Lake barely has a market at all. A proposed gold project could reopen the story, because mining towns are never entirely finished. But as of this recording, Lynn Lake is what nobody is buying looks like when the sentence reaches its end. Number 4 was built by a government, on purpose, and its housing market runs on a switch. Number 4. Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. In 1981, the province built this town from nothing. Streets, schools, a recreation center, all laid out in advance to house coal miners for the massive quintet and bull moose operations in the Northeast Rockies. Tumbler Ridge has spent 4 decades showing what happens when a housing market is wired straight into a commodity price. Coal runs, the town fills. Coal stops, the town empties. And today the MLS tells you which half of the cycle it is in. Roughly 50 homes are for sale in a district of about 2,400 people, with the average listing near $232,000. But scroll the inventory, and the floor drops fast. As of this recording, a 1-bedroom condo is listed at $69,500, and a 3-bedroom house at $134,900. A town with waterfalls, dinosaur trackways, and a UNESCO geopark out the back door, offering a condo for the price of a used pickup truck. But every buyer understands the price is not set in Tumbler Ridge. It is set in steel mills on the far side of the ocean. You are not buying a condo here. You are buying a seat on a commodity chart, with a kitchen attached. Number 3 is the heaviest story on this list, the Canadian town that held a vote on its own funeral. Number 3, Murdochville, Quebec. Deep in the Gaspé Peninsula, 40 minutes of empty mountain road from the nearest village, Murdochville was built by Noranda in the 1950s as a copper town, home to thousands at its peak. The underground mine closed in 1999 and took 300 jobs. The smelter followed in April of 2002, 300 more. With Noranda went $1.4 million in municipal taxes, and residents were warned property taxes could triple just to keep the town running. So on August 25, 2002, Murdochville held a referendum on itself. Should the town be closed, its residents compensated and relocated? 437 people voted yes, 238 voted no. 65% of a Canadian town voted to erase its own home from the map. One lifelong resident told CBC she voted to stay because this was the place she had been happiest in her life. Quebec refused to close the town, then watched half the remaining population leave anyway, some abandoning their houses outright. Today around 600 people remain, and something unexpected is happening. A ski operation now sells the mountain's deep snow, and a mining company is drilling for a sequel to the copper story. But look at who today's buyers are. Chalet buyers, powder chasers, people who do not need Murdochville to be a town, only a destination. The families never came back. Number 2 is a town most Canadians have never heard of, at the end of a road that goes nowhere else. Number 2, Manitouwadge, Ontario. Take Highway 614 north, off the Trans-Canada. Drive 50 minutes into the boreal forest, and the road simply ends. At Manitouwadge, carved out in the 1950s, around gold and copper discoveries, the town thrived while the Giko mine ran and started fading when it wound down in the 1990s. Statistics Canada counts 2,105 people, a population down more than 8% between recent counts. Now look at the market. Per MLS data, more than 30 homes are for sale at once. In a town this size, that is an enormous slice of every house that exists. The median list price is $159,999, and the cheapest listing on the board is $27,900. $27,900 for a detached house in Ontario, the province where the average home costs more than 20 times that. Stand at the end of Highway 614 with cash in hand, and you could own a home outright by Friday. No mortgage, no stress test, and you would still hesitate at the front door. For the same reason as every buyer in this video, the road into town is the only road out, and the market knows it. Which brings us to number 1, the town that lost its mine, its market, and finally its name. Number 1, Grande Cache, Alberta. Perched on a Rocky Mountain plateau, ringed by river valleys, Grande Cache might be the most beautiful town on this list, and it is the purest warning in Canadian real estate. It was built in 1969 for coal, and it lived the boom hard. In 2012, at the peak, its metallurgical coal mine changed hands in a deal valuing the operation at $1 billion. 3 years later, with the company drowning in $500 million of debt, a controlling stake in that same mine sold for $2. Then on December 24th, 2015, Christmas Eve, the mine suspended operations and let go its last 220 workers, capping nearly 700 job losses in 3 years. What followed was one of the fastest housing collapses in modern Canadian history. A town councillor told CBC his own home had been appraised at $282,000 and that he expected it to be worth around $140,000 by the end of that same year. Half in a year. A longtime local broker described the bottom this way: families sold the quads, the campers, the boats, everything, trying to keep making the mortgage payments. When that failed, they left their keys at her office and drove out of town for good. At the worst, she saw 2 foreclosures a week. And then came the vote, September 25th, 2018. 1,065 ballots to 32, Grande Cache chose to stop being a town. On January 1st, 2019, it officially became a hamlet, governed from an office 2.5 hours down the highway. The census tells the rest. 4,300 people in 2011. 3,200 by 2021. The mine has flickered on and off since, and the views never left. But every buyer who looks at Grande Cache today is pricing in the same memory. They watched $1 billion become 2. And after that, no house price in town has ever felt like a floor. So here is the real reason. In these 10 towns, you are not buying a house. You are buying shares in the town itself. And buyers have stopped believing in the company. But there is one more layer, the part nobody says out loud. Remember how this video started. CREA says the market is recovering, the average home near $700,000, and Canada is supposed to be a country without enough houses. Both stories are true at once. Half the country cannot afford to buy in. The other half cannot afford to sell out. The shortage was never just about homes. It is about where the exits are, unless you are the one buyer the trap cannot catch. Paid in cash, retired or working remotely, planning to stay for good. For that buyer, a few of these places are among the cheapest livable homes in Canada. And that is the next video. Because one Northern Ontario town that once sold lots for $500 already proved a comeback is possible. Drop a comment with which of these 10 towns you have actually driven through, and whether you would buy there at any price. I read every one. Subscribe if you want Canadian housing broken down with data instead of headlines. Every week. See you in the next one.